is when I was in 11th grade, many, many years ago. So my brother got married. My sister-in-law. It was at my brother's Shabbos Sheva Brachos a long time ago, where I first met a lanky kid named Yossi Kalter. My sister-in-law is a Kalter. And that was a long, long time ago. And since then, through my years in yeshiva and then out here in Las Vegas, Yossi was a little bit of a mishpacha on many levels, on a family level, but also working here at the Kollel, we were mishpacha. Yossi, from the youngest of ages, when I knew him, had a certain swagger, a certain confidence to him. And he was a real inspiration. Yossi was here in Vegas for not very long. His tragic early demise was so painful to so many. But in his few months that he was here, he made such a big roshem in our kollel and on this city. And I think I'm pretty confident. I know our kollel would not be here if it wasn't for Yossi's contributions in those early years when our kollel was a fraction, and Las Vegas, the Torah here in Las Vegas, was a fraction of what it was. And it's a tremendous zechus for his neshama. All the Torah, if we think about, we take for granted sometimes how much happens here today, 2024, here in Las Vegas, in kollels, and schools, and girls' schools, and mesiftas, and so many mostos, Baruch Hashem. And Yossi was a big part of that. And it's a tremendous zechus. And I know I speak to his mishpacha pretty regularly. And I know it's something that Rabbi Kalter Sr., Gesundsein, he always says, you would think, if you really think about it, think about the horrific experience that their mishpacha went through the last few months when Yossi was alive here. He told me this numerous times. You'd think he would never, ever want to come back to Las Vegas. It's such a traumatic experience. And he says that's not how he feels. It's not how the mishpacha feels. Feel a tremendous kirva, tremendous closeness, a tremendous love, because they know what Yossi meant to our kollel, what Yossi meant to Torah in Las Vegas. And it gives them tremendous hisorus whenever I tell them what's going on here, whenever they see all the amazing things that are going on here in Las Vegas in terms of the Torah that's being built. It's tremendous zechus we have tonight. Here's some divrei hisorus from Rabbi Aryeh Goldman, who will inspire all of us.
Okay, good evening. Thank you everyone for being here. It's a big zechus for Yossi, for his family. Some of us knew Yossi, throughout his years in yeshiva. Some of us knew Yossi from his life out here. But anyone who I've spoken to about Yossi and his life out here has told me how much of an inspiration that he really had on them. So in a way, coming together tonight, when we come to celebrate our shared mission of working to be Mekadeshim Shemayim together, everyone here in this group, we're all here trying to be Mekadeshim Shemayim, each of us on our own and each of us, as part of our group. We're trying to educate, inspire, to help people to know, understand, and appreciate the greatness of Hashem, the beauty of the Torah, the value of the mitzvos, all of these matters, really, that we try to spend our lives throughout our days, trying to bring these messages of the beauty of the Torah, the beauty of the mitzvos, how great Hashem is. Hopefully, as we join together tonight to celebrate and appreciate all the things that we're all doing together as a unit, it'll be a big zechus for Yosef's neshama. So a number of things come to my mind personally, thinking about my relationship with Yosef and what I've seen. And really, the same memories that I have been echoed by everyone who I speak to about him. Thinking about his bitachon. certainly something that comes to my mind. Even knowing him in yeshiva, even before he came out here, even before, he really stood up and showed the world what a true Baal Bitachon really is. His sincerity, how he worked so hard to be an Eved Hashem, was something he was so proud of. In a way, Moshe Rabbeinu is celebrated for being an Eved Hashem. It seems like such a simple kind of thing to do, but being a true servant of Hashem and to really embrace and value that as a goal in life was certainly something that came across through all of our interactions. His determination and his passion to work hard and to really accomplish, to really try to be the best person he could be every day. Whatever was going on in his life, on an easy day and a hard day, he had the passion and determination to really make sure to do the right thing. There were many obstacles, many hardships that really stood in his way in his last number of months. But his emunah, his bitachon, his recognition of what's really truly important in life came across in a very clear kind of way. He had a tremendous focus on wanting to be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim. Again, this was even back in the days of yeshiva, speaking to him about, what his goals, what his ambitions were. Being Mekadesh Shem Shemayim was always very much on his lips. He could certainly be described by anyone who knew him as a real mensch, a real person who had great midos, who had a true sincerity and a clarity about life, and was able to be observed very easily through his behavior, who he truly was inside. His teachings, his words, his behaviors really reflected all of these ideals and values. In a way, thinking about Yosef, over the past number of parshios, maybe one of the main characters, if not the main character, was really Yosef. Reading through the parshios at the end of Sefer Bereshis, you really get to learn a lot about Yosef HaTzadik. And in a way, a lot of the things that we really were able to learn about in these parshios really reflected themselves in very similar ways when you think about our friend Rabbi Kalter. Just to go through some of the things that stood out from a brief thought process about who Yosef was. In a way, he was on top of the world. He was the favorite son in certain ways of Yaakov. And he was really a child prodigy that really stood out in many ways. And then his life changed overnight. He's sold down to Egypt. He's sold down to Mitzrayim. And here he is. He's a slave. He's put in jail. And in a way, if you expect, okay, so how does this story work out? Like, what did he do in the meantime? Did he survive? Was he able to really be able to manage his life during those times in a way where he was able to at least survive as an Eved Hashem? And what we see is the exact opposite. Yosef's growth through the hardships, through all of the unique kind of experiences he went through, really stood out in such a significant way. One of the basic stories, he was faced with one of the greatest challenges, his nisyonos with Eshes Potiphar. We know he was known as Yosef HaTzadik because of the fact that he had the clarity in life to really make the right decisions. But one of the parts of the story that stands out to me is when Yosef was speaking to Eshes Potiphar, and he was describing what's my relationship like with my employer, with Potiphar HaTzadik, with Potiphar, who's probably not the best of all fellas, who was his employer. So he describes to her the hakaras hatov that he had to his employer. He says, Kol asher yesh lo nasan li, that he had this recognition that even though he's my boss, he's my slave owner, but at the same time, he's really treated me nicely. And I have a lot of hakaras hatov, I have a lot of appreciation for that. Not really the thing that would come to mind, when you think about someone who's stuck as a slave, thinking about his captor, his owner, his boss, as someone who realistically has treated him in a fair kind of way, or at least he's given him many, many benefits. You think about his empathy when he dealt with his, so to speak, coworkers, those people who shared the prison cell with him. So you think about Yosef, he wakes up one morning and he sees that they don't seem to be having a good morning. So maybe the coffee didn't work out so well, major tragedy, but he wanted to know that I see and I get a sense that your day is not really working out so well. What's wrong? What's going on? Please share with me what's on your mind. You think about your friends, your buddies, if you get a sense that they're having a hard day, you want to reach out to them and ask them, hey, how are you doing? When you think about it, these are Yosef's, comrades sitting in the jail cell with him. Yosef's empathy, his sense of purpose, of recognition of my job is really to be able to be sensitive to all of their feelings. Certainly stands out as the kind of character that Yosef HaTzadik had. Madua pneichem roim hayom. That was the kind of person that Yosef was. You think about Yosef's emunah and his anivas in dealing with Paro. Paro calls him into his office for a job interview. At that point, he didn't know it was a job interview, but Paro says, hey, I heard that you're a great person, Yosef. Yosef says, you know what? It's not really me. It's really Hashem. And Rabbeinu Bechaya says such an interesting thing. You see that Yosef kept mentioning Hashem's name in his interactions with Paro. And he says, you know what Yosef was trying to do? He was trying to be Makari Paro. You think about that. This is what's on Yosef's mind. He's stuck in jail. He sees an opportunity. Maybe I'll get out. Maybe this is my get out of jail free card. And what's on his mind is maybe I could be Makari Paro. And he says, he started talking to him about Hashem, teaching him that there's a Borei Olam in the world. Just going through his day, you see, this was the kind of character that Yosef was. He was the kind of character that saw people in his jail cell with him, and he was empathetic with them. He tried to reach out to them, make their day a little better. He's the kind of person who had a real hakaras hatov to his boss, to his owner, to the person who is holding him, as a slave. You think about the fact that then his brothers finally, here comes the big day, his brothers finally come down to Mitzrayim. And Yosef, it comes time where Yosef wants to tell his brothers, hey guys, guess what? I'm Yosef. Remember those days when you sold me down to Mitzrayim? Yeah, that's me. And you see, he says, Va'ata al te'atzavu. His initial reaction was, don't feel so bad. I know that you guys are feeling terrible. You guys are having such charata about what you've done. But what's on Yosef's mind, the victim's mind, so to speak, is I don't want the aggressors to really feel so bad. I get a sense that you're going to feel responsible. You're going to feel terrible about what you've done. Now, please don't be so nervous. It's okay. Let's put it into context. Let's put it into perspective. Hashem wanted all of this to happen, and he reached out to them with his emunah, with his bitachon, with his compassion and kindness. And that's how he dealt with his brothers. It's almost unimaginable to think about someone who had spent so many years, away from his family, so many years where he looked at his destiny as, I'm one of the Shiftei Ka, I'm growing up in the family with Yaakov Avinu, I'm learning Torah, I'm growing from my experiences with my brothers, with my mother, not with my mother, but with my father, and I'm ripped away by my brothers who had thrown me into slavery. And here comes the big day. I could really rub it in to them. I can really make them feel it. And hey, they deserve it, don't they? And Yosef's mindset is, let me reach out to them with compassion. Let me try to make them help them deal with this unique kind of emotional experience in the best way possible. Later on, we know after Yaakov Avinu passed away, Yosef recognized that his brothers were nervous. They were concerned Yaakov Avinu passed away. Maybe Yosef was putting on a facade the whole time. Maybe he's really out to get us. And Yosef reaches out and tells them, as Rashi puts it, Ein belibi sina aleichem. He tells them that my relationship with you is the same as my relationship with my brother Binyamin. He tells them that it's such an almost impossible kind of thing to do, which is to overcome, feelings of being hurt by someone else. The Mesilas Yesharim describes, the feeling of pain when you've been hurt by other people as something that you have to be a Malach Elokim in order to really be able to get past it fully. And this is what Yosef was saying. He was describing to them, Ein belibi sina aleichem. He says, I don't have any sinna in my heart, for you. So this is who Yosef HaTzadik was. According to the Das Zakenim, when Yosef initially introduced himself to his brothers, he made sure Binyamin wasn't in the room. He didn't want Binyamin to know about the Mechira. He didn't want Binyamin to find out that he had been sold into slavery. And then throughout all the years, the Das HaKenim says later on, he tried to stay away from his dear father, Yaakov Avinu. He didn't want to interact with Yaakov too much because he didn't want Yaakov to find out what was the backstory. Hey, where were you the whole time, Yosef? What actually happened? What was the real story that was going on? It's almost hard to even begin to imagine that he really kept his distance from his father Yaakov. Even when Yaakov was in Mitzrayim for so many years, he wanted to make sure, I don't want Yaakov to find out what ended up happening. It's hard to actually understand how Yaakov didn't ask him, why wasn't that appropriate? But the Das HaKenim gives us at least his perspective on the story, where he was telling us that Yosef's commitment to loving and caring about his brothers was so intense that he wanted to make sure that Yaakov would never actually find out what happened, in order to make sure that Yaakov wouldn't be upset at his other children. So when we think about Yosef being an Eved Hashem and what that represents, he was the kind of person that throughout his daily life, you were able to see an active living Kiddush Hashem. You think about the compassion that came out of Yosef HaTzadik. You think about the emunah and bitachon. You think about the commitment that Yosef had to care about the emotional needs of his brother, to care about their safety, to care about their reputation. This is who Yosef HaTzadik was as he went through the day. His next door neighbor, imagine we walk outside of our house and our next door neighbor seems to be having a hard day mowing his lawn. Not out here in Vegas so much, but he looks like he's having a little hard time. Hey, Utah, what's going on? That's our neighbor. You think about, I don't know, I'm busy. I'm running to the kollel, hopefully running to pick up my kids. So do we have the time imagining Yosef HaTzadik? That's what he spent his life doing, really wondering and worrying about, are the people in my life, how are their emotional feelings? How are they feeling today? And really making sure to spend his life being an active Kiddush Hashem. Thinking about Yosef HaTzadik also, as he was young, some of the things that he wasn't really the best at, he hadn't yet conquered and achieved the highest levels of being aware of the feelings that were in his brothers' hearts. He was acting in certain ways that really developed a certain amount of kinah, that his brothers had for him. He didn't communicate with his dad in a way that really reflected the greatest sensitivity. And he was held accountable for the fact that as a youth, he wasn't able to really see and appreciate the importance of really being so sensitive to his brother's needs. Yet at the end of his life, what we see is the things that Yosef HaTzadik goes down for is explained and described by the Torah as he was maybe the greatest person that on record of being able to be sensitive to his brother's needs. Imagine, I don't know how many stories in the Torah really highlight more about the compassion that one brother has for another than to stay away from his dear father for 17 years so that his dad would never ask him, hey, Yosef, what was the backstory? What was actually going on? When his brothers who had sold him to Mitzrayim were here finally recognizing, oh man, what do we do? What I would have felt is like, yeah, they should feel a little bad. It would be almost require a malach to not rub it in actively. It's one thing to not rub it in and to hold back, but to go out of his way to try to calm them down and to try to help them have the perspective that, you know what, it's okay, it's not so bad. Really, it was all Hashem's plan. Don't feel so bad. It all seemed to work out in the long run, and you shouldn't really feel so bad. So as we mentioned previously, we're all part of this shared mission. We're all trying to be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim. We're all trying to work together in order to really bring to this community, to all the communities, a sense of an appreciation of how great Hashem is, how great Hashem's Torah is, how important it is for each and every one of us to be dedicating our life to making sure to do the mitzvos of Hashem. So in a way, it brings up, the feeling that we try to share with Hashem on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We mentioned V'yasu chulam aguda achas lasos ritzoncha b'lev avshalem. That what we look forward to is really in the time of Mashiach, what's described as what the world is going to look like is that we're going to have all of humanity joining together in order to serve Hashem b'lev avshalem with our full hearts. So it doesn't just mention that each and every human being on their own is going to recognize the truth of Hashem. Rather, we're all going to be in aguda achas, one joint unit, trying to work together in order to help each other, in order to fulfill this ultimate mission of really serving Hashem in the highest extent. You know, the Navi Yeshaya tells us that in the days of Mashiach, when you think about ultimately the way that the world is supposed to look and what we're trying to build to try to create that world as much as we can, it says, Vigar ze'evim keves, and namerim gedi, that you think about even the wild animals, they're all gonna really live together, you know, with their, what's currently right now their prey. And all the Mefarshim basically explain that this is really potentially true for all the animals, but it's really reflecting on all of humanity. And it's really describing that the world is going to be a place where there are no victims and aggressors. Rather, everyone is joining together in order to really be in a place where we love peace and we pursue it. Yes. But the Rambam tells us a very interesting thing. The Rambam Moreh Nevuchim, I saw it referred to. He describes that the end of the pasuk in Yeshaya, what he describes is, he says, what's going to lead to that? He says, because of the fact that Ki mala haaretz de'as Hashem, that's actually going to be the source for what leads to this peace. He says that, as the Mesilas Yesharim says, that Ram b'famalia kish kish karya, that when you have a little coin in a big barrel, you know, if the barrel's basically empty, it makes a lot of noise. He says that generally our feelings of competitiveness, our feelings of arrogance, our feelings of trying to be better than other people, not really working together with shalom, it generally comes when inside we feel empty, when inside we don't really have a true recognition of what our purpose is in life. And the Rambam explains that in the time of Mashiach, and really what we're building to right now is trying to educate ourselves, inspire others. True shalom comes from people who are happy. True shalom comes from people who are fulfilled. True shalom comes, you know, when people recognize, I was created with a divine purpose. I was created with a divine mission. And I'm working so hard to fulfill this great divine mission that each and every one of us have. So as we're working here, really trying to bring this message to ourselves, trying to educate, inspire, encourage all those around us to really recognize Hashem created all of humanity with this divine purpose. And the more that each and every one of us really embrace this mission, then the more shalom we're going to have, because we're going to feel like, hey, we need each other. We want each other. We want to help each other. The best thing in the world is to really try to get together and work toward this shared mission. It's really the best thing for everyone in the world. However, unfortunately, obviously, we have a long way to go. We have a lot of work to do, and we're trying to work every day in order to encourage ourselves and others, educate ourselves and others to get closer and closer to this divine mission. So the Gemara in Yuma tells us, it says that, what do you describe as a true Kiddush Hashem? So the Gemara describes, he says that when someone learns Torah, when someone's involved in doing mitzvos, and as the Mesilas Yesharim says, he says the more and more someone is involved in doing Torah, in learning Torah and doing the mitzvos, when we are that kind of person, and then we are medaber im abrios benachas, we speak to others with kindness, respect, and compassion. And when our maso matan is be'emunah, when we have integrity in our business dealings, it seems like such a simple thing, being a nice guy, really speaking nicely to others, treating others with respect, treating others with compassion, trying to make sure that we have integrity in our daily lives, in our interactions, you know, with others. So when we recognize, when someone sees a ben Torah, someone who is learning Torah, someone who's representing Torah, is also a mensch, then they recognize, you know what? Hashem is the one who is the true God. Hashem's Torah is the true Torah. Hashem's Torah is beautiful. Hashem is great. And those who are representing Hashem are really the ones who, the more involved in Torah that we are, the more of a mensch that we'll become. So on the surface, you might ask yourself, if everyone really wants to be a mensch, so why aren't we all such a mensch right now? If all these people who haven't yet seen the beauty of Torah really recognize, you know what? I want that. I want my kids to be like that. Why do they need to see a ben Torah who's like that in order to be inspired to do so? And it seems like what the Gemara is telling us is that we all have the capacity to appreciate it, that every human being internally has a neshama, and that neshama is receptive. that when they see that there's a mensch, a ben Torah, who's acting with such great midos, he really treats the people in his life with such respect and dignity. He really interacts with all of humanity, with such kindness and compassion. Then that really, it really connects with their neshama, and they're able to recognize, yes, that's what I want. I want to be like that person. I want my kids to be like that person. So it's a really important thing the Gemara is telling us, is that a big part of our education, our inspiration, we don't have the opportunity to really sit down, with every person who we bump into, in the Las Vegas Valley, and really be able to sit down and learn the Tosfos with them. But there's so many people who do interact with all of the B'nai Torah and all of the people in our community. And in a way, what the Gemara says is maybe even more powerful than sitting down and learning a Tosfos with someone, is someone's ability to see the person who's learning Torah is a mensch. I want some of that. I want to learn the Tosfos. Apparently, learning Tosfos is something that helps me become someone like that. So in a way, you think about Yosef HaTzadik. You think about what this Gemara is teaching us. And the Gemara is teaching us, and Yosef HaTzadik is telling us, when we represent Torah values in our daily lives, in our daily interactions, it's powerful. It really is compelling to all of those who interact with us throughout our lives. There's a piece in the Sichos HaMusar who really gives us a little bit of the same kind of perspective. He talks about the fact that when Hashem gave us the Torah, it's when we were Ke'ish Echad B'Lev Echad. When all of Klal Yisrael got together and we all really felt that our true mission in life is to work together in order to be the best person that we can be. When we have that kind of perspective, that's when Hashem gave us the Torah. It's not surprising, because the Torah is really a representation of all of the midos of Hashem. Hashem and the Torah and Klal Yisrael, it's all really about trying to emulate the ways of Hashem. And when we're ready and we're focused on being that kind of person, then we're going to be able to accept the Torah in its true form. He talks about the fact that when the Malachim came and they spoke to Avram Avinu, and they said, Ayeh Sarah Ishtecha, where is Sarah, your wife? And as Rashi says, it was Ketei L'chavav al Baila. It was to bring more love and compassion and closeness between a husband and a wife. So the Sichos Musar asks, he says, what was wrong? Why was that so important? They loved each other. They cared about each other. It's so important. They probably weren't fighting too often. Isn't not fighting good enough? And what he highlights to us is that's not really what shalom is. Shalom is not just not fighting. Shalom is not just caring about each other. Every level of closeness is such an important step. And that's really what the Malachim recognized, is that more and more positive is also important. It's not just good enough not to fight. It's not just good enough to relatively get along. It's such an important thing to actively invest in being closer and closer to each other. He talks about the fact that Leah felt ki sinua anochi. He quotes the Medrash that says that what was bothering Leah so much? It wasn't really like Yaakov didn't like her. Rather, the Medrash says that she didn't feel fully loved. So not feeling fully loved, why is that such a big deal? And he explains it wasn't coming from her feeling of, that she didn't feel good about herself. Rather, she appreciated the true benefits of what true closeness really is supposed to be. And any element of a lack of full love in her mind was considered to be a big problem. So these two Chazal really highlight to us, what does it really mean to have shalom? What it really means to have shalom is not just not fighting. It's not just getting along. It's really feeling close and connected to the other person. And every level of connection is something that's worthy of investment. One of the Chazals that really probably talks to many of us is that Yosef, Yosef was named Yosef. Why did Rachel name Yosef Yosef? Ki asaf elokim es cherpasi. Because Yosef got rid of the friction that was in our relationship. Now, what kind of frictions they're referring to? Because until now, if I broke a plate, Yaakov's going to be a little bit upset at me. He's going to think of me as, oh man, you can't get your act together. You broke another plate. But now that there are kids around, now we could always blame it on the kids. It sounds so childish from one perspective. But Reb Chaim Shmulevitz explains, he says it wasn't really a childish kind of perspective. What she recognized is any degree, even of a slight kind of feeling of, come on, Rachel, what's going on? You couldn't get your act together? Which probably was a fleeting thought that may have gone through Yaakov's mind. I'm sure he had many plates, that he could have, substituted. But any kind of feeling of, you're not so capable, any kind of feeling of, why'd you mess up, is considered to be something that in Rachel's mind was a really big problem. Not because of the fact that she couldn't handle it. She wasn't, someone who was struggling with her self-esteem. Rather, it's because she appreciated what true love really is. And every degree of closeness is such an important thing. Every degree of respect is such an important thing. He highlights when Hashem was Mishana L'mana Shalom, Adoni Zaken, my husband is old. None of us are as young as we used to be. And it's part of the reality. And he highlights Avram wouldn't have been too upset if he heard, that his wife had said, you know what, he's an older man. He's not really in a position to really be having too many more kids. That kind of description would have somewhere on some level been something that in Avram Avinu's mind would have been a lack of a complete shalom, with him and his wife. So again, Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz is highlighting to us, when we want to be a mensch, when we want to get along with people, it's not just okay to not actively do things that are hurtful to others. It's not just okay to relatively get along and not really try to be getting in other people's way. Rather, he talks about the goal of shalom is to really feel close to each other. It's really to be rooting for each other, to be v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha in a true sense, to really be wanting the best thing, for all of those around us. Now, obviously, that's a mountain, and climbing that mountain takes a really long time, but it gives us a sense of the dedication of what the goal is supposed to be. That when we want to be a mensch, when we want to be an Eved Hashem, what we want to be doing is to really represent in our lives a dedication to wanting to care as much as we can about each and every one of us. So just to end with one more chazal, that chazal tell us that kol mal ben shinayim lechavero yoser mashkeu chalav. It says when we give someone a smile, it's more beneficial to them than really taking care of their physical and financial needs. And the author of Slobodka describes, he says, sometimes our financial needs are very, very real to us. And sometimes our physical needs are very, very real to us. So what does a smile give a person more than someone taking care of all of their other needs? And what he describes to us is, he says that friendship, that kind of message that you matter to me, that's really what a smile reflects. Your life, your existence is important to me. Your existence is something that is very helpful to me in my life. And therefore, I am happy to see you. That demonstration of respect, of kindness, of compassion, of love and affection is something that can be so beneficial for each and every one of us to receive from all of our different friends. And one thing that's interesting is Mal ben Shinayim Lechavero doesn't require a speech. It doesn't require a letter. It's really our body language really represents what we think and feel about those around us. So in a way, you think about our daily lives. Rabbi Trapper Olav Shalom used to refer to the fact that as we go through our lives, how many people do we pass in the hallways? How many people do we interact with, just on a very, very casual kind of basis? Are we telling people, you are a good friend of mine. I really respect you. I really care about you. I'm so happy to see you today. It takes a half a look, a half a glance. You could get a sense of, I'm too busy. I have no interest in you today. Or I really, really care about you. I'm so happy to see you today, but I'm late for minyan and I'm in a rush. So the difference, it comes across in a very, very real and meaningful kind of way. Just to sum it up in, I guess, a couple sentences, thinking about both, our dear friend Yossi, thinking about Yosef at Tzaddik, and really thinking about, the Gemara that's teaching us that what really inspires someone, what really motivates someone to really want to recognize the greatness of Hashem, the greatness of his Torah, what it really means to be someone who's emulating the ways of Hashem. Sometimes is just all of our daily interactions that we have with the people in our lives, whether it's in a school, whether it's in shul, whether it's, in the street. Anytime we're interacting with others, we're basically giving off an impression of who we are and what we value and what it really means to be an Eved Hashem and a Ben Torah. And in a way, if through our conversations, we act like Yosef HaTzadik, where anytime he has the opportunity to teach people about Hashem, even in a basic interaction, somehow the person walks away with more of a value and appreciation for Hashem. Anytime in our basic conversations that we have with someone, we're representing, talking to them about what's truly important in life. And really, sometimes in a small little conversation, we could really highlight to them, what it really means in order to be a mensch, to be an Eved Hashem, to be a Ben Torah. And even not in our conversations, just from people seeing how we interact with others, from people being able to see, he's medaber b'nachas u'mabrios. He speaks to people with respect. He speaks to people with kindness. He really, really cares about others. And he interacts with others with the ultimate levels of integrity. These are the kinds of things that really represent what it really means to be learning the Torah, following the ways of the Torah, and to be a mensch in our everyday lives. So from everyone I've spoken to about, I wasn't here in Las Vegas with Yosef, but I was in yeshiva and I saw him, interacting with his friends. And from everyone who I spoke to out here, they all said the same basic ideas, that his dedication to doing what's right was so noticeable just in your basic interactions with him. His being a mensch, his really truly having the right values of what it really means to go through life as a Ben Torah were things that were so clear and obvious in his daily life. And that was the kind of thing that had such an impact, a lasting impact on his family, friends, and everyone who he interacted with. And really for all of us, again, we're all here. We all really do have a shared mission. We're all really trying to work together in order to represent Torah, to really motivate people to get more involved in Torah. We're trying to explain to people what it really means to understand Hashem, to understand the values of Hashem, to emulate the ways of Hashem. And we have such a power because people are so receptive. As the Gemara says, when someone sees it, they want it. Even if they don't tell you beforehand that they want it, when they see what it really truly means to be a Ben Torah, every human being wants that in their core, in their neshama. So hopefully we'll all be zocha to really be able to continue our mission and to really highlight for ourselves, it's the ultimate goal for all of humanity to be like that, but at least those in our closer circles, for us to all have that feeling of we're all joined together, we're all working together. And that's with that kind of mindset and perspective, we'll truly make the greatest Kiddush Hashem that we can. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.